"You look tired," she said, her voice low, soft in a way that felt like she was speaking to a smaller part of me, the part that hadn't been touched in years. I almost laughed. I wasn't tired. I was wrecked. College, night shifts, noise, all of it. But it wasn't the kind of exhaustion you fix with sleep. It was the kind that settled under your skin. She saw it, somehow. She always did. Her name was Clara, my friend's mom. 40-something, elegant without trying. She wore quiet colors and always smelled faintly like rain on warm pavement. The kind of woman who didn't chase attention. It arrived and waited politely for her to notice. That evening, the house was still except for the hum of the fridge. My friend had gone out. I'd stopped by to grab a book I'd left after dinner the week before. I should have just left a note. Instead, she opened the door in a loose sweater, hair undone, glasses low on her nose. The kind of detail that made the air between us suddenly aware of itself. "You don't take care of yourself," she said, tilting her head, that half-smile people use when they're pretending not to worry. "I'm fine," I lied. She stepped aside to let me in. The living room light was dim, golden, like late afternoon pretending to last a little longer. I stood awkwardly, book in hand, pretending not to notice that she was watching me. Her eyes lingered just a second too long before she turned away. "Sit down," she said. "You look like you could fall over." I obeyed because it was easier than resisting her voice. She disappeared into the kitchen. The sound of running water filled the silence. Then a towel. A drawer opening. When she came back, she was holding a small bottle. Something clear, herbal. "It's just oil," she said, setting it on the coffee table. "For the neck, shoulders, helps with tension." I should have said no. Should have laughed it off. Instead, I nodded, and that single nod changed the weight of the room. She moved behind me. Her hands hovered for a heartbeat before touching my shoulders. Cautious, then firmer. The heat from her palms sank through the fabric. Her touch wasn't practiced like a masseuse's. It was personal, searching, as if she was learning me through her fingertips. Neither of us spoke. The ticking clock grew loud enough to feel. "You're so tense," she murmured, more to herself than to me. "Guess I don't notice anymore," I said, voice rough. Her fingers slowed. The sweater sleeve brushed my neck. I caught the scent of her hair, rosemary, or something close. My chest tightened in a way that had nothing to do with stress. She hesitated, then pressed a little harder, her breath grazing my ear. I swallowed hard. The room felt too small for both of us. "Better?" she asked, and it wasn't just about the massage. I turned slightly to answer, but the angle brought my face inches from hers. Her hand froze on my shoulder. We stayed like that, too close, too aware, the space between us charged, fragile. Then, from outside, a car door slammed. My friend's voice called faintly, somewhere down the driveway. She stepped back fast, hands to her hair, eyes darting toward the window. I stayed sitting, heartbeat loud in my ears. "Your timing," she whispered with a nervous laugh, "is terrible." But her gaze lingered one more second, that kind of look you can't unsee, before she turned toward the door. And I realized the massage wasn't what I'd remember. It was that pause right before she let go that I told myself it was nothing. Just a strange, quiet moment that got out of hand. People misunderstand signals all the time, right? But a week later, I was back on her porch. It wasn't planned. I'd been nearby, or at least that's what I told myself. Her car was in the driveway, lights low inside. The kind of dusk where everything looks half true. When she opened the door, she smiled like she'd been expecting someone, and then hesitated when she saw it was me. "Oh," she said, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "It's you." "Yeah," I said, rubbing the back of my neck. I left my notebook here last time." She didn't ask which notebook. She just stepped aside, and I walked in. The air smelled faintly like coffee and her perfume. That same soft, grounding scent that never announced itself but somehow filled the whole space. On the table sat 2 mugs, one half full. She'd been drinking with someone, maybe, or alone. The thought twisted something in my chest that I didn't want to name. "Rough week?" she asked, sitting down but not quite relaxing. Same as always, I said. You? Her laugh was short, quiet. Same as always, she echoed. Then after a beat, that's not good, is it? I shook my head. Probably not. She looked at her hands, a habit I was starting to notice. When she didn't want to say something, she studied her own fingers like they were safer than my eyes. Her husband had left years ago. I knew that much. She never talked about it, but my friend once said he moved to Oregon with someone younger. It wasn't gossip, just one of those things you hear and pretend to forget. Now, sitting across from her, I couldn't. You shouldn't come here so often, she said suddenly. People talk. I didn't know people noticed. She looked up, eyes sharp for a second, then softer. They do. I nodded but didn't move. The clock ticked again, that same rhythm as before, as if it remembered. She leaned forward to take my empty mug, and her hand brushed mine. Just a graze, but enough. I didn't pull away. Neither did she. Then she froze, realizing how long her hand had stayed there. She withdrew slowly, the air between us snapping quiet. Sorry, she murmured. Don't be. She looked up, really looked, and something unspoken passed between us. Maybe loneliness recognizing itself. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words caught somewhere behind my ribs. She stood, pretending to tidy up, but her movements were too careful, like she was hiding the tremor in her hands. When I got up to leave, she walked me to the door. The space was tight, her shoulder brushing mine. A small, accidental thing that didn't feel accidental at all. Good night, she said. You should have ended there. But as I stepped outside, she reached out, fingertips catching my sleeve, just for a second. Hey, she said quietly. You really should take better care of yourself. I turned. Our eyes met and she let go first, but not fast enough to undo what it meant that it started raining the next time I saw her. Not the soft kind, the kind that makes the world sound like static. I ducked under her porch, phone dead, shirt plastered to my skin. I was half laughing at the storm when her door opened. You again, she said, half a smile, half a sigh. You'll catch cold out there. I didn't plan this, I said. She tilted her head, water dripping from my hair onto her doormat. You never do. She stepped aside and I stepped in. The house felt smaller this time. Warmer, maybe. A candle burned on the counter, flickering against the glass. She moved around the kitchen, grabbing a towel, tossing it toward me without looking. Dry off before you ruin my floor. Caught it, rubbing at my hair. Didn't know you cared about the floor. I don't, she said too quickly. For a while, that was all. The sound of rain against the window, the faint hum of music from her phone. I could see her reflection in the glass. Hair loosely pinned, sleeves rolled up, profile softened by candlelight. And just like that, the silence turned heavy again. I wanted to tell her I thought about her, that I noticed the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was nervous, or how her laugh always came a beat too late when she was pretending to be fine. Instead, I said, You ever get tired of being careful all the time? Her hands stopped moving. Careful. Yeah. Always saying the right thing. Doing what looks right. She didn't turn around, but I saw her shoulders rise, then fall. It's called surviving. Something in her tone made my throat tighten. I took a step closer, just one. The air between us shifted. She turned then, eyes steady on mine, searching for something neither of us would name. You're too young to understand, she whispered. Try me. She smiled, sad, almost fond, and looked away. You shouldn't be here. I know. Then why are you? I opened my mouth, but before I could answer, a phone buzzed on the counter. My friend's name flashed on the screen. Both of us froze. Neither moved to answer. After a long second, she reached over, flipped the phone face down, and exhaled. He'll think I'm asleep. The way she said it, quiet, resigned, felt like something breaking. I stepped closer again. She didn't move this time. Her hand brushed mine on the edge of the counter. A soft, accidental meeting that neither of us corrected. The candle flickered lower. Her breath was uneven. So was mine. Her eyes lifted, cautious, questioning, and for a moment, everything narrowed down to the space between us. If I'd leaned in an inch more, we would have crossed something that doesn't uncross. But I didn't. Neither did she. The rain filled the silence instead. Then she whispered, "This is a bad idea." And still, she didn't step away. That I hadn't planned to see her again so soon. But that night the storm power cut hit half the town. The neighborhood was dark, silvered by lightning. Her porch light was one of the few still on. Generator, maybe. I told myself I was just checking in. She opened the door before I could knock twice. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "I know." But she didn't close the door. Inside, candles again. The kind that make everything look softer than it is. Shadows flickered up the walls. She stood in the middle of the room, arms folded, but her posture wasn't sure. Like she'd been pacing before I came. "You keep finding reasons," she said. "Maybe I stopped needing them." Her eyes flashed, then softened. Don't what? "Say things you'll regret." The word regret hung there. I saw it hit her too. "You think I don't know what this looks like?" she said. "He's your friend." You're not just anything," I said quietly. She looked away, exhaling through her nose, the sound almost a laugh, almost a sob. "You have no idea how lonely it gets when the house goes quiet." That was the first honest thing she'd said all night. Lightning pulsed outside, bright white across her face. For a second she looked younger. Then it was gone and the shadows came back, deeper than before. I stepped closer. My hand lifted, hesitated, then brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. She didn't move. My fingers grazed her skin, warm, trembling slightly. Her eyes closed, just once, like she was giving herself permission to feel it. "Don't," she whispered again. But the word broke halfway through. "I can't keep pretending," I said. "Not after." "I know." Her voice barely there. "I know." Silence pressed in. Rain ticking against the windows, the faint hum of the generator. She reached up, fingers tracing the edge of my sleeve, stopping at my wrist. The smallest touch, and everything in me lit up. "Do you ever think about—" I started, but couldn't finish. She nodded before I could. "Every day." Something in the air cracked then. Not thunder, not sound, just the fragile line we'd both been balancing on giving way. I leaned in. She didn't step back. Her breath caught, a quiet sound that filled the space between us. I could feel the warmth of it against my lips. Then, a door creaked at the end of the hall. Footsteps. Her son's voice, faint. "Mom?" "Power's back." We froze, still inches apart. Her hand dropped from my wrist, but her eyes stayed on me, wide, alive, terrified. She mouthed, "Go." I hesitated. She shook her head, whispering, "Please." I slipped out the side door into the rain, pulse hammering. Her warmth still ghosted on my skin. Behind me, through the glass, she stood motionless in candlelight, hand to her mouth as if trying to catch the words we hadn't said. For 3 days, we didn't speak. Every time my phone buzzed, I half hoped it was her. Every time it wasn't, the silence grew heavier. Then she texted, "Can we talk?" No punctuation, just that. I went. When she opened the door, her eyes were different. Guarded, tired, but already wet around the edges. She stepped aside without a word. The air between us felt strange, like a room waiting for bad news. "I shouldn't have called you," she said. "You did, though." "I know." She swallowed hard. "He knows. My son. He heard something that night. He asked if there was something." My stomach dropped. "What did you say?" "I told him no," she said quickly, too quickly. But the look he gave me, he didn't believe it. Lightning again, but only from the lamp behind her. I noticed her hands twisting the hem of her sleeve, knuckles white. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "You shouldn't be caught in this." "Caught?" I stepped closer. "You think that's what this is?" She turned her back, facing the window. "You don't understand what people will say. What it'll do to him. To you. To me. I don't care what they say." "Well, I do." Her voice cracked on the word "do." I've already lived through being the mistake someone made. That landed between us like glass breaking. I realized then, she wasn't just afraid of being found out. She was afraid of being left behind again. She pressed a hand to the window pane, the rain outside smearing her reflection. He said you looked at me differently. He noticed before I did. I moved to stand behind her, close enough to see the pulse at her neck. He's not wrong. Her breath fogged the glass. Don't. I reached up, almost touching her shoulder, but stopped. I'm not going to apologize for how I feel. You should, she said, voice trembling, because I can't promise I'll stop you next time. She finally turned, and our faces were inches apart. The fear in her eyes was tangled with something else, something that made every reason to walk away dissolve. You lied, I said quietly. Her eyebrows drew together. About what? When you said it didn't mean anything. She didn't answer. The silence stretched too full, too alive. Then she reached up, fingertips brushing my jaw. Barely there, but enough to make every nerve in me go still. Maybe I did, she said, almost a breath. And then she stepped past me, heading for the hallway. Her shoulder brushed mine, slow, deliberate. At the doorway she paused, hand on the frame. Tomorrow, she said without looking back. If you come here again, I won't stop you. The words hung in the air long after she disappeared down the hall. I stood there, heart pounding, the rain starting up again outside. Louder this time, like it knew what was coming. Morning came gray and quiet, the kind of light that makes everything look softer than it really is. I hadn't planned to go. I just found myself walking. Past the park, the old oak, until her street appeared beneath the fog. Her car was still, curtains half open. A shape moved inside. I knocked once. She opened the door in a sweater too big for her, sleeves half covering her hands. The look she gave me wasn't surprise. It was recognition, like she'd known this moment would arrive and had run out of ways to stop it. You shouldn't be here, she said again, but it sounded more like memory than warning. I know, I said. You told me that last time. We stood there, rain dripping from the eaves, silence folding around us until she stepped aside. Inside, the air was warm, faintly floral. Coffee steamed on the counter, untouched. I didn't sleep, she said. Me neither. She smiled faintly, shaking her head. This isn't going to make sense to anyone. I stopped trying to make sense of it, I said. Her eyes lifted. Just what? Missed you. That broke something. She crossed the space between us in 3 quiet steps. When she reached me, she didn't speak. Her hand rested on my chest, light as a question. I keep thinking I should tell you to leave, she whispered. Then why don't you? Her fingers curled, gripping the fabric of my shirt. Because I don't want to. The room shrank. I could feel her breath near my throat, her heartbeat against my ribs. I wanted to close the distance, but I didn't. Not yet. You're scared, I said, of what this makes me look like. You're not the only one people would talk about. That earned a quiet laugh that wasn't really a laugh. You don't understand how loud gossip gets when you've already been through it once. She looked up, eyes shining with something rawer than fear. But you make it quiet for a while. My hand lifted, brushing a strand of hair from her face. She didn't move. Her breath caught when my thumb traced the edge of her jaw. This has to mean something, I said. It does, she answered, voice shaking. That's the problem. For a long second, everything waited. The clock, the rain, us. Then she leaned forward until her forehead rested against mine. I can't undo this if I start, she whispered. Then don't start, I said. Choose. Her breath trembled once, then steadied. I already did. The space between us vanished. Not a kiss. Not yet. Just the quiet surrender of 2 people finally too tired to keep pretending. Outside, the rain softened. Inside, everything stilled. When she finally stepped back, her eyes held mine, calm now, unguarded. Whatever happens next, she said. No more pretending. And for the first time, we both knew exactly what that meant. Morning light spilled through the curtains, soft and golden, the kind that makes even silence feel full. Neither of us spoke for a long time. The house was still, except for the sound of her kettle starting to hum. Clara moved quietly, the way people do when they're afraid to break something fragile, though maybe this time it wasn't fear. Maybe it was reverence. I sat at the table, hands wrapped around a mug she'd handed me. Coffee, too strong, too real. The kind that grounds you. When she finally sat across from me, she looked different. Not lighter exactly, just unhidden. "I thought I'd wake up and regret this," she said. "But I don't." Her voice was calm, steady, like she'd finally decided to stop fighting with herself. "I don't either," I said. "For once, I don't want to." She smiled. A small, quiet smile that said more than words. Then she reached across the table, her hand resting over mine. Her touch wasn't trembling this time. It was certain. For a while, that was enough. Just the warmth of her hand, the soft pulse under her wrist, the quiet between us that didn't need filling. "I kept thinking about the difference," she said. "Your age, my past, what people would think." But then I realized, she paused, eyes flicking to the window, where the light caught the rain still clinging to the glass. "People don't get to decide what's real for someone else." I nodded. "We don't have to explain it." She looked at me then, really looked. Her thumb brushed across my knuckles. Slow, absent, like she was tracing something she didn't want to forget. "Whatever this is," she said, "it's ours, even if it doesn't last forever." The honesty in that hit harder than any confession. It wasn't a promise of perfection, just truth, quiet and human. I stood, came around the table. She turned in her chair, looking up at me, eyes soft. I leaned down, pressing my forehead against hers. No words, just breath, just that shared stillness that felt like an answer. Outside, the clouds were breaking apart, sunlight flickering across the floor. She exhaled slowly, leaning her head against my chest. My hand found hers again. Fingers interlaced this time, like we'd finally stopped resisting gravity. Neither of us knew what came next. But for once, that didn't matter. For once, the world outside could say what it wanted. She looked up, voice barely a whisper. "You still look stressed," she said, half smiling. "Maybe," I murmured, brushing a thumb along her jaw. "You'll help me with that." Her laugh was soft, real. It filled the room the way light fills morning after rain. Quiet, forgiving, entirely alive. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?